afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. For those on Zoom, hello, and welcome to our participants here in person. Our session is Soft Skills for Faculty. I am Krista Kimmel. I am in the School of Communication, and I'll let my colleague introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Dr. Laurel Schwartz. I'm in the College of Health Sciences. Welcome and thanks for joining us today.
This topic has kind of become I don't want to say passion project, but it's been an ongoing project that Laurel and I have worked on, and we feel it's just a really important area of discussion for our students, especially given some of the challenges that many of them are experiencing. So we want you to leave here today with some tangible ideas of simple strategies that you can implement in your teaching. And we have some case studies to work through, so we hope this will be interactive. So please participate and share what works for you. And we'll go ahead and get started with our first conversation point. Okay.
Thanks. All right, so, and I'm going to participate too. I love to participate whenever I'm doing something, so I'm going to do this too. But like Krista said, this is something that this topic has been ongoing, and the more we get into it, the more I think this is so important. Students having employability skills, those soft skills as they leave college, but also us as faculty modeling those and demonstrating them. And as we approach midterms, I think this is a great reminder for us as well. So what I'm going to have you guys do, so in Zoom or in person, is I'm going to do what I like to call a 1-minute paper. I do this in my class sometimes when we're getting started. So I'll set my timer here in just a second. But for 60 seconds, 1 minute, I want you to write whatever comes to mind about these different characteristics, and they should be listed on the screen for you. Kindness, caring, mentorship, empathy, and listening. And I'm going to start the clock. All right. That's 30 seconds. Second. All right, there's a minute. All right, do we have anybody that wants to share some of the things that you wrote down when we think about these characteristics? Anybody in Zoom or in person want to share? I don't see anybody coming off mute. Dr. Fair, oh, there we go.
No, okay. Oh, I think they're muted.
Yeah, I think that's
Someone's talking, but they're muted, I think.
Lena, are you talking? She said
No,
no.
okay. I thought I saw someone.
I'm not talking, but Laurel, I thought you might call on me, so I turned my camera on.
Now that you planted the seed, I am gonna call on you.
Well, that's fine. Just the word kindness, I think always, and I know that's maybe cliche on a mindset, but these students are our first ones fully high school pandemic, or at least the ones that I see mostly. And so, you know, just being kind, smiling face. I've had them tell me no one else does that. And I'm like, wow, I hate that because I don't feel like I'm the only one that smiles on this campus. But yeah, kindness, a smiling face, a listening ear, always.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Dr. Fairchild, do you want to share?
Yes, I said that caring is paramount and that empathy is one of the most important skills we teach in the communication discipline. So it's really just, it's not, oh, I feel sorry for you, but it's really trying to understand their perspective and where they're coming from. And with listening, we have to really look what they're saying non-verbally as well. I had a student yesterday talking to me and her face was just crestfallen, so I knew something was wrong, it's just a matter of listening from her, tell me.
Anybody else?
I think this is Kim Kinser. Thank you all for doing this. Number one, when I look at the words and kindness, caring, and empathy and listening, I think that us displaying those things to our students help make us approachable. I know that there are students that, in fact, several that I advised this morning were talking about an issue with a course and they didn't feel comfortable approaching the professor. And I think if we can display those attributes, it makes us approachable. And that's what students need. They need to feel comfortable in talking with us about anything.
Yes, thank you, Kim. I think you guys had some very valid points. So I'll just share a little bit about these. So the kindness, caring, mentorship, empathy, and listening. If you think back, Krista and I have been involved with each iteration. We've had 3 now of the Thank a Professor program, if you will, here at EKU. And when we look at the data, kind of all the data together from the 3 iterations, these are the overarching themes that students tend to thank faculty and staff for. And so I think this underscores a lot of the comments that you all made. And Kim, thank you for sharing about your experience just this morning. I think that's extremely relevant as we approach midterms, as we are turning in midterm grades, as we are having students who are realizing, I am not doing so well. What can I do? How can you help me? How do I connect them to resources? These soft skills for us to model and demonstrate are exceptionally important. And I'll just share, I even called Krista after this happened, but today, it's one of those days I just had thing after thing on my calendar. So I finished one thing this morning, was in my office, I responded to a student's email, and I said, just come talk to me if you have time today. This is easier to discuss in person. And she came in and she was just absolutely distraught. I mean, just crying, came in and she said, I don't know what's wrong with me. And she was just upset. And so all I could do in that moment was be kind to her, to listen to her, to tell her that the way she felt is valid, that it's okay not to have all the answers, to show her empathy, and to make sure that she was okay as a person in that moment and not just a student. And it was a reality check for me, I have to say, because I was like, whoa, I don't know how to do what she needs. Am I doing this? Am I doing what she needs as a student? Am I doing what she needs as a person? And so it was really a good reminder. I'm a believer in things happening for a reason. I think for me, it was a great reminder of why these soft skills are important and how they impact our students when we have these skills and demonstrate them. Yeah, Matt.
William Julie from the chat says, I once falsely accused a high school student of doing something he had not done. I later apologized, and he was truly surprised. He told me that I was the first teacher who had ever apologized to him. I'm guessing I wasn't the first to be wrong.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. I mean, definitely. I think if you and that's a hard thing, if you said something to a student or you said, I think you've done this and they truly haven't. Yeah, absolutely apologizing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No,
That's great.
And I think humility is
Yes.
also a great skill and important in this conversation. If I make a mistake, I will own it.
Yeah.
And I will tell my students, if I do that, show me grace, but I will fix it. And students are very understanding because they do know that we're human. And I think as long as we're willing to admit that, hey, I did mess up, then you're accepting of that.
Absolutely.
Well, this is a good transition into our next point of conversation. So like Laurel said, we are at midterms. So this is a really good time for us just to do an audit of our classes and what we're doing in our classes, and maybe asking students what's going well, what's helping them learn versus what might help them learn better. So that's one of the reasons why we timed this session at this point in the semester. It's right at midterms. But thinking of that broad question, what behaviors help you feel included or welcome? So think of a time where you felt especially included in a conversation, in an organization, in a meeting. What behaviors made you feel that way? If someone would share or maybe type in the chat.
I'll just share that the number one thing that makes me feel welcome is if I see smiling faces. it's really silly, but I come to class smiling. I very much appreciate when I start class if I see them even half smiles. I'll take those on a Monday morning, but smiling faces. I love a smiling face. I feel welcomed when I see one.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to share. I would just say that I feel included and welcome when I am heard. When, you know, someone takes the time to listen to me and they actually see me as an individual and like recognize me as a person, that makes me feel seen. And as a communication person, like Dr. Fairchild just mentioned, we're in communication. I think one of the most important things that we can do for another human being is to see them and let them feel acknowledged.
I pride myself on knowing names. As Laurel can attest, I have a unique name. And it gets said in lots of different variations, and I'm okay with it at this point. But I feel like students know that I know who they are or am looking for them or will recognize when they're absent, especially if I know their name. And I try to do that within the first week, maybe the second of the semester.
Sharing that, absolutely. Knowing names is, the older I get, I hate to say this, the older I get, the harder it gets. I'm like, golly, there's 30 of you, but learning those names, the picture rosters, oh, those are a gift. They help tremendously. But learning names, so small, but so significant.
Yes, absolutely.
Anybody else? Did you, Matt, was there something in the chat? Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha.
Well, just kind of keeping those characteristics and traits in mind as we go forward and the idea, I think there was just mentioned about seeing students and recognizing them as unique individuals. You know, they're not cogs in the wheel. These are actual, you know, humans in our classes with a purpose, and they're here for reasons and they're here for goals. We can help be a facilitator in that process, which is, you know, really powerful. And I was talking to Jennifer yesterday and she shared about a student who had come in for advising. And he said that, you know, his family had moved from Michigan. He was from, you know, a rougher neighborhood, really bad environment. And he moved to Kentucky for a better life and for a chance. And he said, I'm not going to be a statistic now. And then he shared that same story in my class later that day. I didn't get a chance to tell you that. And when that happened, I'm like, you know, this is why we do this. You know, we are here, I mean, education is transformative, so for everyone, but for some students in particular. So keeping that in mind, you know, why is this discussion important in today's academic climate? And there's a couple of data points and stats that we want to talk about, but, and we know this from our own observations, but our students are more diverse than ever. We have first generation students, we have students who are older, students who have families, ethnic diversity, gender diversity. On top of that, we also have students who are experiencing increased challenges with mental health, with basic needs, food insecurity, housing insecurity. Those types of issues are real struggles for many of our students. We're also seeing students who are academically underprepared or who lack readiness in certain subject areas. I remember reading, I think it was last year, that 1 in 5 students who took the ACT did not meet any of the benchmarks for the subjects, reading, math, or the others. That's 1 in 5, right? That's a pretty significant number. At EKU, our freshman class last year was 50% Gen Ed, or 50% first gen. 50% first gen. So our student population necessitates this conversation. We have more diverse students than ever, and we have students who are experiencing a wide variety of challenges, either with preparedness, with personal struggles, with things going on at home, caregiving responsibilities, holding down jobs, raising families. So it's important that we talk about just how we engage with the students, how we have conversations with them before we even start teaching. And we know from research too, that a sense of belonging and a sense of connection to the campus is crucially important to retention. Students who do not feel like they belong, students who do not feel a sense of community with their campus, who feel detached, they are retained and graduate at a much lower rate. So I think, asking ourselves, we can be the reason why a student feels like they belong here. I think that's, such an important point to emphasize. Exactly like that. So we will kind of move on with this discussion. So what are some simple ways that we can incorporate soft skills into our interactions with students? And we have some suggestions here, but we also want to hear from you all, our faculty leaders who incorporate these types of behaviors in their classes. So we start with the syllabus. We start with the first day of class. Someone told me when I first started teaching that the first day of class is incredibly important, and it is. It sets the tone for the entire semester. So, I don't know about you all, but when I was an undergrad, my teachers, they passed out the syllabus, we went over it, and then we left. We called it syllabus day. And it really did not do anything to set the tone for the class. So we can do an audit of our syllabi. Is our language welcoming? Are we using inclusive language? Are we sharing resources in the syllabus? Are we encouraging students to use those resources? Are we making it clear how they can connect with us? Are we inviting them to meet with us throughout the semester? So just setting that tone on the first day of class is really important. I think in feedback, in terms of evaluation, how do we give feedback to our students? And, one thing that I do if I'm giving feedback online, I always use their name. We talked about using names earlier in today's discussion, but I'll always say Chris or hi, Emily, and then I will go through and I will leave feedback to that person, just so they know that I am thinking of them as an individual student, that this feedback is for them specifically. Do we praise small progress? Do we acknowledge when growth is happening? I think that's really important to recognize and acknowledge when students make progress. Maybe they went from a C to a B on an exam, but that's still improvement. That's still showing growth. So do we praise effort? Do we praise when students are trying? Are we open to feedback from students? That's part of active listening, asking students what's working in the class, what would help you learn better. Are there suggestions from students on assignments or on course content that would enhance your course? So I think part of being a good teacher is being open to feedback, of course, in course evaluations that we get at the end of the semester. Occasionally, I do get some really good suggestions from students, and I will incorporate that in because they know how they learn best. And my job as an instructor is to listen to their needs and not be prescriptive of what they need, but listen to what they're telling me that they need. We also talk a lot about building community, and how important that is in having a student feel like they belong on campus. And, I think that should be baked into the entire semester, really, community building. It starts on that first day, getting students talking to each other, getting them comfortable with you. I know that Laurel does an activity where she introduces herself to the class. So, that kind of humanizes you, I think, as an instructor to them. Somebody mentioned that earlier. So what can we do at the beginning of a semester to start building that community? During the middle, do we do check-ins? Do we ask how things are going? Do we start our classes with how are we doing today? On a scale of 1 to 10, how do we feel? Or, just how's it going? Great today. And, you can do that in creative ways with memes or through polling software devices. Sometimes I'll use Kahoot because students may be reluctant to raise their hand and speak out, but I find that they'll answer a poll. And that helps me learn how they're feeling. And, at the end of the semester, also celebrating the community that you built, asking them to reflect on their experience in the class. One of my favorite strategies I like to use is I ask students to give advice for the next semester students who are taking that course. And I will collect that toward the end of the semester, and I'll actually share it at the beginning of the following semester. So it kind of creates that little thread between the classes, and then the students who receive the advice, they're like, oh, wow, this is neat. This is what other students who have said, who have been in my seat before. And it sort of gives them a little bit of inside information and knowledge. And then the last strategy that we'll talk about is tilt, transparency and learning and teaching. So being clear. Dr. Laura Vance always says that clear is kind, and that is a mantra that I have borrowed from her over the years, because being clear is kind. I think sometimes we think, oh, I'll have an assignment be really flexible, and students will like that because it's open-ended. That makes them anxious, right? I mean, that's just been my experience. Students, their anxiety increases immensely when they don't know what's expected of them. And that's completely fair and valid. Right? I mean, we don't like to be evaluated on metrics that we're not aware of either. So we need to do that for our students. So for all of my assignments, I always tilt them. The purpose is at the top. Why are we doing this? What skills are being built? What are the criteria for success? How will they know that they completed this assignment effectively? So remember, being clear and direct sometimes is the kind way to be.
Great segue into hearing into what some of you guys like to do. So let's take a few minutes, and since I don't think we need to do groups now. Let's take a few minutes, and I would love if everyone could come up with 2 small changes you can make in your class this spring. Small gestures can make a big impact. And then we'll share those. I'm going to share 2 that I implemented this spring. Actually, I think I did something from the fall too. And I'll give you a little bit about how they're going. So let's take a few minutes for each of us to think of something that we can change, one small change. So anybody have any solved all the world's problems, ideas? Anything you can come up with?
I don't know that I've solved the world's problem, but at the beginning of the semester, I always do a student information sheet, and I always update it based on things I've heard before. So of course, what are your pronouns? What do you want to be called? And I read that before I call names, so I don't call anybody by their dead name. And then this time, I also added, what's your favorite song? Who's the artist? So for each class, I made a playlist. Everybody's favorite song is on it. So that way, when they come into class, they're like, oh, I love that song. And I want them to know, like, yeah, you told me that first day of class. And that's why we're playing it. So it's not just my favorite songs, but it's just a way to see them. And it's easy. You have Spotify or anything like that. Just I make 9:30 a.m. playlist, 11 a.m. playlist, and then it's their favorite songs.
I love that.
That's awesome.
That is
Yeah.
awesome.
That's community, I
That's
think,
awesome.
for sure.
That is community. Anybody else?
Well, this certainly doesn't change the world, but one of the things that I have done this semester in my online classes is to incorporate some lecture videos. I actually um, got that idea from some student feedback, but I think it does make a difference in those classes because students can feel so far removed um, from their professors. They don't see us, they don't hear our voices, that kind of thing. And so, I intentionally made those where some of my personality shines through and that kind of thing. And my students can get to know me a little bit through those. And then in addition to that, teaching communication, I can kind of model some of the same skills that I'm seeking to teach them in those videos. That's easily done when I'm meeting face to face, but not nearly as easily done in an asynchronous online class.
Thank you for sharing that one. Yeah, sorry, Matt.
Chat, Robin Wood says, I'm going to be more intentional of learning names and calling them by name regularly. I'm also going to be more intentional in speaking when I see them on campus outside of the classroom.
Yeah, so, I mean, absolutely. I tell my students, once I have you in class, I will say hi to you. It doesn't matter if we are in upstairs PAL or Case, or if I see you at Home Depot. I will say hi to you, because I'm excited to see you, and I do. And a lot of them appreciate that. And I don't embarrass them or anything, but I just say hi, and I want them to know that I acknowledge them. I'll share one thing, well, two quick things that I've done. And one of these I actually got from Krista. So at the top of my syllabi, I think I did this in the fall and I did it in the spring as well. So you know how you have to have all the required information, and we have a beautiful new branded template, which I think is really cool. That has your name, the course name. I wrote a small intro paragraph, and I mean, it's just 2 or 3 sentences, and it says, welcome to whatever class. And I say, I'm so glad that you're in this class together. You're in this class, and I'm so glad that we're gonna learn together every Tuesday at 9:30 about XYZ. And then one of the big things that I got from you, Krista, is that in the section of my syllabi where it talks about grading and evaluation, I have a blurb, and Krista shared it with me, and it talks about, if you are worried about your grade, please come talk to me. I understand that things come up during this semester. Please don't hesitate to come speak with me about your grade if you are concerned. So not only do I tell them I write that, another thing, I like to call them a wellness check. When students are absent, especially in my majors classes, when I know them and I know who they're friends with, once we start class and we get going and I have to sign in sheet, if I see so-and-so is absent, if they're doing an activity, I may walk over and say, hey, heard from Emily. You know, I haven't heard from her, and usually she'll say if she's not in class, you guys know if she's okay. I just want them to know, one, I know they're not there, but two, I also want to make sure that they're okay. Like, they're not living in their car, you know, they're not, something really traumatic hasn't happened, you know. I'd much rather know, oh, I just overslept, versus something horrible has happened to the student. I just want to know that they're okay. And then from student feedback, I realized that I give a lot of in-class work. We're very hands-on in my discipline. And I got feedback one time, I think last spring maybe, and it said, we do a lot of in-class work with no credit. And I thought, you know what? That's fair. That's absolutely fair. So I started doing what I call learning journals, and it's like a put together version of what I want them to do during class. So it kind of mirrors what I'm talking about. We have points where we stop and we do things individually, in pairs, in groups, and then they submit it on Canvas or in paper, and then they get 5 points for that. And so it reinforces participation, it reinforces participation in class, and it reinforces being there. And so it's a way to reward them for what they're doing. And so I was like, I love that idea. Enough about me. Anybody else?
I just want to say I love these ideas. These are fantastic. William, I appreciate that you brought up asynchronous courses. So I think it's so important for the students in those classes to see us and like actually know what we look like and what we sound like. The videos can really do that. And I used to be one of those people that I would reshoot the video over and over until it was perfect. But then I realized, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that. And if they see me flub up, that just makes me seem human to them. And they'll realize that it's okay in this space to make mistakes, that we're all growing and learning. So I love that suggestion. One thing that I did that has been kind of fun, and it helps build community, and it allows you more chances just to interact with students, is I would post a question of the week in a discussion board. And it can be something silly like, you know, what did you want to be when you grew up as a kid? Or, you know, just a question like that to kind of get conversation started. And I made it worth like 2 points. So it was very low stakes, but they did get points for doing it. But it allowed me to interact with them on a more personal level. And they also got to respond to each other. So, you know, they could share memories, or they could share, you know, commonalities like, oh, I binge watched that show too. Let's talk about it after class. So.
Love that. I love all the creative ways that we connect and show our humanity to our students, which I think is really important. And I really like and appreciate that Roglina brought up, because sometimes I know I forget. Roglina's right. This is our group of students that went through high school in the pandemic. And I think it is really, really important to have that reminder. And I was reminded today, I was doing something our college does a program with high school seniors and Baptist Health. So I spent 2 hours with high school girls this morning, and I was like, whoa, this is a whole different world than college seniors. And so I had to really think, okay, they're not a college student yet. And so that was just a great reminder when you said that, Roglina. So I just appreciate that. You guys have such creative ideas.
Could I add, I'm sorry. I just wanted to add a little bit of that because, uh, I'm in a high school right now. As a matter of fact, that's the reason I didn't turn my camera on right away. I'm a full-time high school teacher and, an adjunct in the communication department. Also, I teach several dual credit classes. So, man, that's where I live, is in that kind of environment between the two. And so, I don't know, that's just something that I do though for my students. That's one of the reasons that I think that these classes that I teach are so important because, for example, I'm teaching a couple of sections of CMS 100 online that are for dual credit students, and it's a way for those students to get introduced to an online class while they can still walk down the hall and see the professor. Um, and just let me, I don't know, help them with some of those things. I tell you, the reason that I'm attending, that I was interested in this session is because I have a student, a dual credit student, who got sick for a week and got behind in her math class, which is not my class by any means. Um, but she said, "Hey, could I come down and get you to help me draft an email to my professor?" And of course I did, but that really got me to thinking about how in this environment, a thing that I do that is as important as my content, I think, is to teach those soft skills. As a matter of fact, I've been talking with our principal, and I'm actually going to work to build kind of a soft skills boot camp for our dual credit students that I teach in the week or so after Madison County starts and but before EKU starts, where I just walk them through those things, and I teach them how to read a syllabus, and I teach them how to draft an email to a professor, and those kinds of things. So that's why I'm here today. It's just something I think is really important.
Love that idea, William. Thank you for sharing that. That's definitely meaningful, and it will impact them as they start their career too, not just starting college. They'll remember those skills and the responses they got from people and hopefully carry those on. So yeah, that's incredible. Love that. I wish I'd had that as a high school teacher, looking back.
Me too.
All right, so we wouldn't be teachers if we wouldn't have some scenario discussions for you guys today. So since there's a small amount, I thought we could just kind of do these together. No need to break out groups. When we wrote these, we tried to pick things that would be something that you may encounter no matter what discipline you teach, gen ed or not, undergrad or undergraduate or grad students. So let's go through scenario A. So student A attends class regularly, makes frequent contributions to class discussion. Those are angels. However, student A has several missing assignments, did not score well in the first exam. What are some ways, thinking about kindness, empathy, caring, mentorship, what are some ways that we can respond demonstrating those soft skills? Or ways that maybe you've responded in the past?
I just had this happen this in the last couple of weeks. So a young man so some of you all know, I spent 19 years as the director of our golf management program, and now I'm coordinating our professional development series of courses, which are career development, soft skills, all those things that we want our students to be proficient at when they graduate. And I've had the privilege of having this young man in class for the third time now, BUS 200, 300, and 400. He never misses class. He always is a part of the discussion, whatever we're talking about. He has missed the last 6 assignments, which is uncharacteristic. So the first thing I do is, as I'm grading and realize it, or what I've done with this young man, is I send him an email and ask him, number one, are you okay? Is there something I can do to help you? I'm worried about you. This is uncharacteristic of you not to turn in your work. And I would love to be able to sit down with you. So in class tomorrow, is there a way that we could find some time to sit down and chat about what's going on? So we did that, and he's now trying to work full time and go to school full time. So his plate's full. but I usually start out with an email to make sure they're okay physically and mentally. And if there's anything I can do with them as far as that goes, and then I want to talk to them face to face besides just being in the classroom. That's worked for me in the past.
Greg Vader from the chat says, that's definitely what I call the student meeting for a one-on-one discussion.
Yes, yes. Another great idea too.
Kim, I've had situations like that too. I back in the day, I had a student in English 095 who, she was a non-traditional student, had two small kids, was married to a guy who decided one day that he didn't want to be with her or the kids. Well, she had come to school. She was working hard to make a better life for them, and really a really intelligent student, that kind of thing. But she started missing, and so I reached out to her. And what had happened was she'd gotten laid off from her full time job. So until she could get another one, she was working two part time jobs to try to make that up. And so I was able to work with her. My class was a face-to-face class, but I did some online things with her because the goal in that class was for her to be able to pass that writing prompt at the end. And the truth was she already could have done that at that time. So I certainly was willing to work with her on that, but a very similar situation to what you're talking about. She went through some things, but I would say too, I would just add to that, obviously we reach out to them and that kind of thing. But one of the things that I always try to do is I try to lead with that positive stuff. I don't say, hey, what in the world's going on? But I try to lead with something like, hey, what I'm seeing is not what I know you're capable of. You have proven yourself capable of more than what's going on right now. So what can I do to help you? So just kind of lead with that kind of thing.
I put something in the chat, but I was just going to elaborate a little bit. In a recent situation for a student I had, I took an opportunity to talk to him about his time management skills. What did he feel like was the reason why he was getting behind or not doing, the written assignments, and really tried to help him learn how to kind of communicate when he was having those challenges, instead of just not doing the work, how to reach out, whether or not it be in my class or anyone else's. And I feel like also just, I guess, letting him know that it was okay. He was still doing well. He didn't need to drop the class. He just needed to, seek out assistance and help. I think that's normalizing, I guess, is probably the word I'm looking for. Normalizing that sometimes this happens and it's okay. It doesn't mean that you are needing to drop out.
Yeah. We get behind.
Yep.
I mean, absolutely. We're all human trying to keep up. I mean, absolutely.
We're all in this together. We're all navigating these waters together. So, okay, great. So let's go ahead and move on to another possible scenario. This might be especially relevant to those of you who assign group work or group projects in your classes. So students B and C have been assigned to work on a group project. However, students B and C seem to have difficulty working together, and student B recently approached you about removing student C from the group. How might you respond in this particular situation?
I do a lot of group work, so I have to put a group work thing in there. I think I remember writing the group work. I feel like no matter what you do with group work, there's always that one group.
Always that one.
There's always that one group.
There's always that one group or one student.
Yeah.
I actually had this happen last semester, kind of like Robin, because I teach event planning, and with events, there's more than one person in a group typically, or there's one person leading and other people heading along the way. And so that was a teachable moment that, yes, this is life. People are not going to show up. They're not going to do what they needed to do. And essentially the show still must go on. So, kind of like buck up, buttercup. You gotta sometimes take one for the team, but I also, involve them in the process so they feel heard and they feel, I don't know, mitigated in a way that they are going to say how the group experience went, because a lot of what we do as well is evaluating the event or evaluating how the preparations and such went, which again, doing events, the preparations are the hardest part, and then the event itself happens. So I think starting group projects in the classroom, not always putting them as outside, because as we know, our students have all the things, have all the irons in the fire. But then also being like, this is real life. We don't always get to pick and choose the situation. And then even giving them the voice to, or kind of rebuttal, even if that weighs 0 on whomever's grade, that's your business as the teacher, but it does give them that, that feeling of being heard again.
One time, you guys can judge, but remember, we listen and we don't judge. One semester, I had groups and I had a larger class and they were majors, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna put all the slackers together, and I did. And I had a slacker group, and it was beautiful because it just worked out on its own. And I don't do that all the time, but I did that one semester, and I was like, all right, let's see how this goes. Those problems kind of work themselves out.
I've done that too.
All right, should we do one more?
Let's do one more.
For the sake of time. Okay. Scenario C, what if your regulars in your senior level class starts missing class, not doing assignments, not quiet, student is a leader, just talk about work, has thoughtful contribution? How might you respond? Well, let's get that one, because I feel like we just answered that.
Yeah, let's go to D.
Go to
Yeah.
D. All right. Go ahead, Krista. I'll let
Sure.
you.
A student in your general education course whom other students listen to and take cues from makes derogatory comments about the course topics aloud to others. How might you react or respond in this situation? So we wanted to throw in a special question for gen ed classes in there, because we know that those come with different challenges and different approaches at times. So has anyone ever experienced this or teaches general education? Okay, yes. I have two.
So I teach in recreation park administration, but I taught GSD 101 for the masses last semester. I don't know if anyone else did or not. I got pulled out of health sciences and in there. But that's fine. I mean, Star and I go way back, and I enjoyed it. But I had to have that one-on-one, because not only were they derogatory about the class, the language was absolutely horrific and not professional. We'll just leave that there. And I had to have the conversation numerous times, and I truly felt like I was beating my head against the wall. But by week number 6, we had gotten it together a little bit, and some other rising stars within the class who had at first let this person kind of overtake it, then rose to the top. So that really helped. But I just think those one-on-ones and being like, I'm not trying to talk to you personally as your thoughts. I understand you don't have to love that you're taking this orientation class, but it is essential, and other people really do care about the topics we're talking about. So those conversations.
Thank you. I've had a very similar situation happen to me probably multiple times now that I think about it, where students, they just, roll their eyes and this is stupid, this is a waste of my time. We even had that in online sections where they complain about an assignment, they call it elementary, whatever. And so I really like your approach of handling it one-on-one. I don't necessarily call that student out in front of the entire class. I pull them aside and I say, okay, first, you have some thoughts on this course. Feel free to share those, because if they have legitimate feedback that I can take, then I'm happy to do that. But once I listen to them, I kind of do what you do. And I say, look, people are in this class and they're here to learn. And, these side conversations, they are distracting from others. And at that point, if it doesn't improve after a few conversations, that's when I bring in other resources. I would contact the English students. We're not alone sometimes in these situations, so it's okay to reach out for others for support if you find yourself in that situation. Because with this one particular student, we did have to go to Laurel with the English students, and she had to have a conversation with them. And things improved after that. Let's just say.
Yeah. It's very interesting to hear how a lot of our approaches are similar, and that we've had similar experiences, and it doesn't matter what discipline we're in or what we're teaching. and our different experiences in our career where we are. So it's, I don't know, something to be said for being able to connect that way. I'll just say in closing, and I'll let Krista close as well, but thank you so much for your thoughts. I know we're running out of time. I want to be very mindful of your time today, but thank you for sharing your thoughts and your experiences. The more I hear from other faculty, the more I find it energizing to know that there's so many faculty here at UKU who are working hard and who demonstrate these soft skills all the time. And I just want you guys to know that in my college, in my building, across campus, my friends, I see your kindness, I see your caring, I see you doing mentorship, I see you expressing and showing empathy, and I see you listening. And today I got that too, just listening from other people and what they're doing. So thank you for sharing. It's been a great conversation. And I think there's more work for us to do, but I think soft skills are important for faculty.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that you are here, that you chose to attend this session says that you care about your students and you care about your teaching. So that's awesome. And we appreciate your comments. And I thought this was a good discussion and a good thing just to keep in mind as we move into midterms and head into that home stretch of the semester. But thank you all for your attention and participation today.
Thank you. Have a great Tuesday. It is Tuesday. No, Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Oh gosh, have a great Wednesday.
Take care, everybody.
Shorted us a day. It's Wednesday. Today should have been the day.
Thank you so much, chat.
Oh,
Okay, good. Thank you for coming in person. Yeah, we got
I love having somebody in here. Poor Matt would have just been stuck with
Matt would have like, what? Oh my God, he listened to that. Yeah.